All right, so it is October, which means Halloween's right around the corner. And I'm just going to give some generalized horror recommendations. Ones I think apply not necessarily to beginner horror, but wide mass market appeal, nothing overly too specific, and the ones I would confidently recommend to just about anyone because I think they could appeal to just about anyone. Starting with classics, I have to recommend Rosemary's Baby. I swear to God, I expected this to just be a dated read. I was reading it because I'm like, I love horror. I just want to have read and experienced the classics. Whether or not I love them, hate them, they suck, I don't know. I just wanted to experience the classics, and I was not expecting to become obsessed and love Rosemary's Baby as much as I did. Don't get me wrong, the movie, fantastic. Love the movie. But the book, I don't usually say the book is better. Not that often. It's a good 50-50 split. The book was better. I loved it. The isolation, the hotel, the characters. I love Rosemary with all my heart and soul. She is moved into this new apartment with her husband. Yeah, husband. And we don't need to talk about him. Terrible human being. And they're pregnant, and everything's so happy, but something's going on. She thinks the neighbors or something's happening with them. There's a death in the building, and she's being isolated from friends and family, and everyone is just pretty much gaslighting her. Oh no, everything's fine. You're not sick. I swear, this woman is like dying throughout the book, and I'm just like, speak to someone, reach out. And it is so good. I love this book. Next we have Psycho. Let's face it, everybody knows the plot of this. I can't imagine someone who does not know the plot of Psycho. Woman is on the run, ends up at creepy motel, someone comes looking for her. We go from there, Norman Bates. And despite knowing the plot, that takes away nothing from the writing and the atmosphere. I adore this book. It's a quick read. Even knowing the plot and plot twist takes nothing away from it. And again, adore it. Easy read, easy recommendation. The final classic I'll recommend would be Hellbound Heart, and this is the inspiration of Hellraiser. It follows the movie very closely. And again, I adore this book. I love this writing. It is incredibly immersive and beautiful and gruesome. Body horror, disgusting. I don't know what people's level of horror is. Maybe it's not for beginners. I feel it's fine. I mean, a little bit out there. But it's so good. And I, popular opinion, was not the biggest fan of the movie. I appreciated and adored the special effects and what it did for cinema and horror just in history. The effects were beautiful, but the plot, I'm like, not my vibe. So I go into the book just wanting to get my baseline knowledge of the classics in horror, and I'm like, if this follows like the movie, I'm probably not going to like it because I'm not getting the visual effects. The movie follows the book near identically with just minor little changes, and the book was so good, so immersive. I had no visual effects. It's not a visual medium. It's just the words on paper, and it's beautiful, and I recommend this. More people need to read this. Please read it. It's so good. Stephen King is a go-to for horror recommendations. You're going to hear people recommend The Shining, and despite my absolute love for that book now, when I first read it, not so much. So it's not one that I go to for horror recommendations just randomly. You kind of got to know your reading taste, and if you really want a slow, character-centric book, and you're in it for the long haul. But for just wide appeal that I can't imagine people not adoring, Pet Sematary. Without question. I'm sorry if you've been beat over the head with this recommendation, but that's because it's near flawless. And I can't imagine people not getting swept away. The examination of grief, but also friendships with the next door neighbors, the elderly man. I believe at some point in time he has a conversation with himself thinking, this would have been like my father figure and I just met him too late in life. Like their relationship and dynamic, so immersive. And the horror doesn't even happen till later on. And it's just so wonderful, flawless. I can't imagine someone reading this and not being swept away. My next recommendation would be Misery. Again, you have isolation horror. You have an author who is trapped with his number one fan. There is body horror. There is dread and isolation and fear, and it's addictive. I can see people not liking the story within a story elements, but that's pretty much it. That's the only complaint I can see people having. And I must recommend my absolute favorite Stephen King in Carrie. I love Carrie. I did not like the movie, really at all. I had nothing good to say about it. Effects were nice, but didn't even blow me away. The book is so much better. It is in its own league and deserves, people love the movie, and I am sorry. But like, their apology should be made for how much better that book was. The character of Carrie White is my favorite person in fiction, full stop. Love her. The strength she has as she's being bullied in high school and just wants to attend a dance, wants to have one good memory and not be trapped in this religious, abusive household, and what she goes through. And the tragedy. This isn't even horror. It is a full-on tragedy of her life and this book and this story. And then her powers go to new extremes to an extent I was not expecting. I did not know about. Gorgeous, beautiful, obsessed with this book. I read it in one sitting. I did not expect it. Once again, I'm like early King, not sure if this is going to be for me. I pick it up. I just want to get my education on classic horror. And I did not move from my chair until I finished this book. I love Carrie. I do feel the need to give a couple more Stephen King recommendations just because the 3 I gave are very standout, very classic King, and I want to give some recommendations that might not show up very much when it comes to his writing. These are ones that are high on my TBR. That would be The Dead Zone, Duma Key, Desperation, I believe it's called, Needful Things, and these are all ones that a while back I made a video of, like I went on a bunch of top 10 recommendation favorite Stephen King books. You had your classics, and then I kind of just took the ones that were still beloved and stood with these classics, but I just hadn't heard of as much. So I am excited to get to these eventually, so you can look up the plot of them and whether or not they sound interesting to you. I can't recommend them myself, as I haven't read them yet. More generalized horror recommendations, we have those across the river. I've always said this feels like an old school classic horror just with modern day writing and pacing, so I feel that can appeal to a lot of people. It is monster horror. A family have moved to a new town, family home. There's been trauma in the family, and this takes place Great Depression-y time zone. Be warned, the N-word is used liberally a lot. It's back in that day. If that's not something you want to read, perfectly fine and understandable. I was not expecting it when I read it because I thought this was modern day. It is not. There is a lynching scene. Be warned of that. If that's not something you want to read, I understand. The characters are all very well developed, and I don't feel I want to give away what exactly is happening with the plot. Better to go in not knowing much. Like I said, old school horror, modern day writing and pacing. I recommend. If you want a fast-paced one, I picked up The Hatching a while ago. I do need to continue this series. One of these days, I will pick up the second book. I think there's 3 or 4 in this series. Spiders take over the world. That's all you need to know. It's more thriller-ish than horror, but spiders take over the world, so that is terrifying, and it is so fast-paced. The characters are great. I really love this book. I read through this thing in no time. Like, it was an addicting read. A recent read, we got Slimer. This was just fun. This was just a fun time to have. It is short. You have characters, some you love, some you hate. One specific one you hate. Showing up, they had a boating accident and end up at an oil rig where there has been an incident. And the title of the book is called Slimer. So pretty much a thing like you would expect. I don't want to give spoilers because it's better to not know what the thing is going into it. But it was just like a B-movie horror, highly recommend, fun times. Be warned of sexual assault that happens in this book. It's not gratuitous. It's not anything that I felt uncomfortable with or took away from the story. Maybe it's a little more graphic than it needs to be. Not even then. It was used to make you really hate this one character, and I feel like it done its job. The exploitation factor to it had a purpose. Intercepts is one I was a little bit mixed on. I wanted a little bit more atmosphere to it, but I still really recommend this one, especially it has some wide market appeal. It's a little bit humorous. You have this government organization who are experimenting on people and doing terrible things to them. And then, let's put it this way: I went in looking for a book like like Nightmare on Elm Street, and I almost got that with this vibe. So you have psychic powers, hallucinations, almost like a waking dream, and this person who's been experimented on is torturing more or less the people involved in the torture that was inflicted upon them. There's a family element, and again, somehow it incorporates horror and humor, dry, dark humor, very, very well. So I do recommend this one as well. A little bit of body horror from what I remember, but highly recommend. Next, we have The Troop. This one was not for me. I don't personally love this one, but so many other people did, so I feel like I gotta have it on here. It is isolation horror. You have kids. A troop of Boy Scouts go on an overnight camping trip. There is hunger involved as they get infected by this parasite that make them ravenous for food. There's body horror. There's a full-on psychopath. Very fast-paced, graphic description of animal cruelty. Be warned about that. Like, this is border on extreme horror for like a couple pages. The focus wasn't where I wanted it to be. I would want more focus on the town and patient zero, but we're just stuck with these kids, and I normally just don't like kids as main characters. So other people adore this book. I feel it's a good recommendation. I'm happy I read it, just wasn't for me. The Shadows, another borderline addicting book, like what the hell was on these pages, because I couldn't stop reading. Every chapter like ended in a cliffhanger. You have two timelines. You have present day and the past. In the past, you have the child version of the main character from the present who is learning how to do lucid dreaming. There's possibly a monster in their dreams. I wish that was leaned into more. There was a death in the past reflecting the death in the present, and they're just trying to form connections. Again, addictive read. Every chapter ended on a cliffhanger. I prefer going into books knowing next to nothing, so just know I recommend this one. It was a good time. Binged all of it. The ending wasn't to my satisfaction. I wish the twist ending was not what I wanted. It was a little bit on the predictable side, and it dragged on a little bit, but I still gave this 5 stars. Normally, I do not give a book 5 stars unless I also love the ending, because the ending is the most important part to me. But the lead up was so good and so addicting that I couldn't not give it 5 stars. The ending didn't ruin it for me. I needed to give this 5 stars. Loved it. We Need to Do Something is a very short novella, and it is possibly my favorite book of the year. It's close to it. It's near the top. Love this book. So essentially, a family has been trapped in the bathroom during a hurricane. A tree crashed in the house, and now they can't open the door, so they're stuck in the bathroom hoping someone will come save them. However, the world outside may have ended. It may be the apocalypse. They're not sure. It may involve witchcraft. We don't know. There is body horror. There is psychological stuff going on. It is so short, I can't give you the plot. The messed up family dynamics, and I love this book. Binged it, loved the characters. Scenes are going to stick with me forever. I love this one. Please read it. The Hole is a good psychological horror recommendation, leaning on misery vibes, sort of. You have a man who has just lost his wife in a car accident where he was also very much injured. He can barely move on his own. He can't feed himself. He can't go to the bathroom by himself. And now he's being put under the care of his mother-in-law. And he just is, he can't even talk or communicate. And then you go into financial abuse, physical abuse, and just not being treated, the loss of oneself, their identity, their autonomy, everything, the lack of control. So I almost wanted to just put this in literary fiction, because of not too many horror elements, but to be that vulnerable and be taken advantage of was terrifying. So I definitely recommend this one. Cabin at the End of the World has stuck with me for so long. I adore it. Very interesting premise. You have this little girl and her 2 fathers alone in the cabin on a vacation when these strangers show up and basically say, listen, the world's about to end. In order to save it, one of you has to die, and you have to choose who. So fathers, we know you're not going to choose your daughter. So pick one of you two to die to save the world. And the parents are just like, you're crazy, what the hell? And it's the crazy people who may not be crazy trying to convince the parents that they're not crazy. And lead them to believe like the world is actually ending and only you can save them. And the other two is just like, you're under mass delusion. No way this is real. I loved this book. It was so good. Ending a little lackluster, but I've come to appreciate the ending with time. Come Closer is the greatest possession story I have ever read. It is told from the woman being possessed, and I adore it. Like, she's doing quizzes on the back of a magazine to see if she's possessed at one point. Like, oh, check 1 or 2, you're fine. Check 3 or 4 of these things, seek medical help. Check all of them, get yourself to a priest, you're possessed. And she's like, what the hell? There's like, I think it was a cat or a dog. I think it was a dog, a stray dog starts attacking Turk because it no longer trusts her. It is so good being in this woman's mind as she's losing time. She thinks she might have hurt somebody. And then the exorcism itself was absolutely fantastic. My favorite example of an exorcism in fiction, full stop. I love this. I don't know if it has a movie adaptation. I've never looked and I'm just realizing that. I need to check because, oh my God, it's wonderful. Please read this one. Highest recommendation. And finally, we're going to go House of Hunger because I couldn't really think of any other vampire books. It has good dynamics, well, it has a good world. The setup being you have these blood maids who go to a rich person's house to give them their blood. Not full-on vampires, but you definitely have that vibe to it. And I wish the dynamics between the characters themselves was a little more interesting, but I can't tell you how addicting this world was. And that's pretty much my entire enjoyment was from the world. Other people love the characters. There's a little bit of sapphic vibes to it, but not enough that I would call it that. Again, I wanted a little bit more for character relationship dynamics. It was definitely, they were there 100%, just not to the extent that I want it. But the world that these people lived in was so wonderful. I just binged this book in no time. So those are my recommendations that I think would appeal to the most number of people. I'll do another video of my personal favorites later on. They lean a little bit more towards the what the hell is this book on kind of side, like crazy left turn plot twist that is either a love it or you hate it. So I will check in with those later. Talk to you later. Bye.